Rahubat Moisar, how you all doing? Anuki Saken Sakamreye. I am Saken Sakamreye. Once again, happy to answer 3 questions that you've sent in. As usual, we like to give gratitude to the master teacher, Partner Babyanun, Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, who basically without him, I don't even know where we would be right now. Yeah, he's literally transformed lives of millions of people. So it's important to always recognize that and to remind people that, you know, the struggle is still on. We've got to do everything we can to support, to get him home, which should be very soon with your help. So please go on to UnitedSabiansWorldwide.com and go to How Can I Help and do your best. All right. Appreciate, love you all. All right, let's get into the questions for today. Before I do, remember, you can always send us 3 questions. Film yourself asking 3 questions, upload them to osmvision.wetransfer.com.
Hi there. My name is Dale McFadden, and I am a knowledge seeker working out of Pennsylvania. So, my questions revolve around the 6,000 year cycle that we're currently in, because I read somewhere, the Emerald Tablets, tablet number 8 specifically, about there being a barrier that was erected for this purpose, for the 6,000 year cycle. You die, you come up to this barrier, there are hounds of this barrier protecting it, and they move at, I think it was described as strange angles that mankind would just not be able to perceive or imagine correctly, and the way to move through it is to move through curves, something of that nature. But if it was as simple as just moving through some, just slightly doing one of these to get out of the reincarnation cycle, I'm pretty sure there wouldn't be millions of people on the planet and new souls being brought in here every day. So my question is this barrier the reason why we, the Nagaru people, aren't receiving any help outside of Dr. Malachi Z. York, who is currently imprisoned? Like, is this the reason why we're being subjugated and at the complete bottoms of society, despite the fact that the planet was supposedly ours before we were invaded?
Okay, so let's address that first question. Thanks for the questions. All right, so the first thing you said is the source of your first question is the Emerald Tablets. Okay, so the first question relates to, let's cut that. Okay, to answer your first question, you said the source of the information was the Emerald Tablets. There are so many versions of what people are calling the Emerald Tablets, so not all of them are accurate in what they're saying. So it would be great to know which Emerald Tablets you're referring to. The original Emerald Tablets is actually written and authored by the being known as Tahuti, who is the reincarnation in the body of Dr. Malachi Z. York in this present day and time. And so he will clarify and give us a crystal clear explanation as to the contents of the Emerald Tablets. He has been drip feeding it throughout the many books and scrolls that he has already put out. Of course, one of the ones that most people are familiar with, which is the Holy Tablets, which was the completion of the information before the hereafter, right? Which was the year 2000, where all the old information was kind of like encapsulated and completed and finished in the Holy Tablets. And it does speak about, when you say the 6,000 year cycle, it's actually not 6,000 year cycles only. It's really the 6,000 year cycle is a part of a 24,000 year cycle. Okay, so they're really 24,000 year cycles. All right, so every 24,000 years, the new cycle begins. Why the 6,000 is significant is because many people are taught by way of religions and the Bible and the Quran, etc., that God created the world in 6 days. But we know that when you're looking at that 6 days, especially when they're saying that in Second Peter's and so on, it's saying that one day to the Lord is like 1,000 years. So what we're looking at is the last 6,000 years of the end of the 24,000 years. You see, so, and then the seventh, what they refer to as the seventh day, will be day one after the 6,000 years of the new cycle of the next 24,000 years. So how the 24,000 years is broken down is into quarters, right? So if you imagine a circle with a cross in the middle of it, or two lines right through the middle, you're going to get a 6,000 year sun cycle, right? Another 6,000 year moon cycle, a 6,000 year sun cycle, if we're going anti-clockwise, right? And then the last quarter of that, imagine it as a cake, right? The last piece is the last 6,000 years. Now, you could break each one of those quarters into 1,000 years each. So when we arrive at the last quarter, imagine that 6,000 years split into 1,000 years each. And the reason we do that is because of the millennium, because when we got to the year 2000, which would be the end of the previous 24,000 year cycle, the 60,000 years counting to, let's say, if we started at the top where we would say, if we're looking at a clock, we would have 12, and then going anti-clockwise, we would go to the quarter will start at 3, right? But broken down into 1,000 years each. So the last 2,000 years is where we have AD. So from 1 AD to the year 2000 AD. So that's the end of that last moon cycle. And then there's a renewal that starts again. And this is where Parnabab Yanun come in with the information. And what's taking place during these cycles, especially now that we've started a new 24,000 year cycle, is that with him coming, with explaining and breaking down and getting rid of 6 ether forces, which were dominant in the last 6,000 year moon cycle, you should be coming out of the cocoon, like you should be awakened. And for those who apply the knowledge and the information that he's teaching, it's raising you back up again, dispelling of all the spell and the lies and all the things that had you in a zombie state. Okay, now when you're transforming, this is why even in the Bible and in the stories that you hear about Adam and Eve supposedly being in the garden and they ate the forbidden fruit, right? This forbidden fruit is symbolic of the knowledge, right? To know good from evil, to know good from bad. Because in that situation, the story goes that the devil, or the person they call the devil, told them that if they ate of the fruit, they won't die and they will be like God or become like God, like Elohim, to know good from evil. So that is telling you that their third eye was going to be open. And this third eye, many refer to as the pineal gland. And that's the ability to then be able to discern good from bad, or know how to make decisions, know what to do in your life with the correct information. You'll be able to see through things. And by that pineal gland being activated, you're more likely to apply the knowledge that will transform you into, we say God in the Bible, or Elohim, or many terms that are referring to you waking up and getting back to your high consciousness. And what does that take? That takes you looking at what you've been doing during the moon cycle, during being under the spell. Like, you're now able to decipher all the false stories, change what you're putting into your body, because your body is literally the bacteria that is designed to hold you captive here, right? It's literally, what's the word I'm looking for? Plaguing your spirit being, and your spirit being in connection with the physical being, power your soul. And your soul is really the real you, if you have a soul. So then when we go into the recycling of, as you say, souls, we have to remember that there are different people on the planet, right? We have beings that are seen, beings that are unseen, and then the physical beings that you do see, they may also be possessed by unholy spirits, demons. So when you wake up, when you're activated, it's about now turning yourself inside out, so that you don't spend so much effort on the physical body, because what you're doing is, by feeding the bacteria, which is your skin suit, you're trapping your spiritual being and ultimately your soul, if you have one. So now let's go into that. If you don't have a soul, then the recycling process is that you're not able to leave here. There are different dimensions and different realms. So depending on you as a being, which ties all the way to your makeup before you inherited a physical skin suit, right? So we'll have to go back to what you existed before you were plagued by this bacterial, this skin suit that we call our bodies. So we'd go back to the highest form would be an Etherian, or an energy being, ether being, okay? That's the highest level in terms of vibrations and frequencies, because when we're looking at everything, ultimately you're looking at different states of vibrations. Vibrations are dealing with waves, with sound, with energy. So at the highest level you have the Etherian, and then as you come down in vibration and slow down, you eventually come to what we're calling the physical world. But even within the physical world, or the material world, it is still held together by atoms and molecules that are vibrating, and depending on your composition, right? If you're a soul, you descend and then you take on the bacteria. Now, we can go into more details about that. So if you don't have a soul, you have a spirit. So if we make it very simple, use an analogy like an egg, right? If you look at an egg, the hard part, the outer shell, will be your body, right? Then your spirit will be like the white, or what, is inside of the physical shell of the egg. Then you have the yellow part, which would be referred to as the yolk. That would be your soul, just to make it very simple. So you can have a physical body, everything that is on the lower vibrations, whether you're looking at these chairs, tables, trees, rocks, animals, they are all composed of different levels of the environment they're in. But as you start to go higher in vibration, you start to lose certain beings. So beings are physical, we can all touch and see physical things, but within that you have the spirit, and then above that you have the soul, and then you have the mental above that, and then you have ether, and all of them are in variations. So you might just be a being that's a spirit being, so you won't have a soul, right? But you have a lunar plex, whereas a being with a soul has a solar plex, and it all ties into heat and generation, how heat is generated. And depending on who you are, you may not be able to reach the higher levels, because if you've lost your soul, or you don't have a soul, you can have a soul, but it is not activated. The activation comes by way of you waking up, right? And realizing that you are more than just your physical being. So certain beings recycle, right? And they come here over and over again because they can only go up to the spiritual realm. They can't go any higher. And many beings are trapped within this physical world as disembodied beings, spirit beings. Then you have beings that utilize your vessel, okay? Because when we're saying you're an energy being, you literally are composed of different states of energy. And the way, again, another simple analogy is to look at it like taking ice, which is solid on the lowest vibration, and then transforming that ice to liquid, which is, a little bit more, it's less dense than the solid part when it's ice. And when you heat up the liquid part with heat, it then transforms into what we call vapor or steam. Yeah. So the steam will travel, but where does it go? It's in the environment. And when you start to look at the environment, you have, like I said, different gases, right? And there are gases that only go up to a certain level. It's just like if you have oil in water, you will clearly see how it behaves. But then you have, say, hydrogen, which is pretty much in everything. And then you have oxygen, which we breathe in. So depending on the different vibrations, or the best word to really describe it is density, you have beings that come over. So now when we're saying this 6,000 year cycle, some beings have an expiration date, which means that there's a cutoff point where you cease to exist, right? In the form that you did previously. So we have 24 to 24,000 chances or times to basically perfect ourselves so that we move on and move up to the point where we don't need to reincarnate or come back. Now, what happens is if there are beings on different vibrations, on different density levels, or in different realms in the unseen world, because you can't see them with your physical eyes, they play a major part in your path to get out of here. Many beings are quarantined here on this planet and they're not allowed to leave. But if you get 24,000 chances and there is a judgment or something happens at the end of that 24,000 years where you've exhausted all your chances, then you do not have the ability to experience or exist in the same form that you were when you had those chances to come back here and perfect your being, perfect your inner being. And you're only going to know how to do that by the person that has been sent and has the knowledge both of the physical world, the seen world, as well as mastering the unseen world. So this is why Dr. Malachi Z. York, as a 720 degree being, all right, over, even if you want to look at the credentials that are given to people on the planet in terms of the highest kind of degrees that you may become, like say a 33 degree Mason, that's only a certain amount of degrees. And that doesn't deal with being a master on the physical as well as on the spiritual. You see, because 360 represents a completion or a circle or cycle. So you'll have to complete the cycle or the circle completely to get 360 degrees. So I know I'm, giving you a lot of information. So when we're talking about this last 6,000 year cycles, some people, the Adamites, time has expired. It's like after this, you don't have any more chances. So they're going to dissipate, right? And when we say dissipate, energy cannot be destroyed, but it can be transformed and can be trapped or can be restricted to a particular, environment. So those who want to learn to transform themselves, to have what people refer to as eternal life, the ability to become a supreme being, which is really for Nagarus, right? The first thing you have to do is drop the egos, right? Start to learn and put into practice Wu Sabat. We say to people all the time, the being that has written the emerald tablets on all these ancient scrolls is here right now. And he's the one with the keys. He knows the way. No other leaders or teachers teach you about things so intricate as what you would do, or when you get to, you mentioned something about how you maneuver. There's a bit in the Holy Tablets where it explains to you how you have to walk a specific pathway, right? And I'm saying that to say that the information that Tahuti wrote many years ago is still now being clarified and explained to us. But even then, like I said, if you read the Holy Tablets, which was the completion of the old information before we moved into what we call the hereafter doctrine is the information that is in the Pataruk, it's in the Master's Secrets, and it's in the actual facts. And he explains that you have, in the Holy Tablets, he was explaining that you have to walk a path called the Sirat, where you get the word in Islam as the Suratul Mustaqim, right? The straight and narrow path. And this is dealing with how, when you're walking this path to see if you'll be able to leave here, there are tests, and you fail the test, you come back. Then you have the beings that can only get to a certain point where they see the white light and they're orbs, and they come back, and then they reincarnate in the sense of they are little white orbs that enter the mother, in terms of the Adamites, the mother's womb at 6 months, right? And these keep recycling in that way. And there are beings who are trapped by beings on different realms, right? That utilize them as an energy source, okay? Because when you really look at it, beings feed themselves in many different ways depending on your composition. So a lot of people feed themselves with foods, right? When you look at foods, what do foods do? They literally break down into liquids, into amino acids, and into what you should be taking as vitality or nutrients for your being. Now, other beings just absorb that energy, not having to go through the digestive process of taking solid, breaking them into liquids, and then ultimately into, acids and, things that you can actually absorb. Some extraterrestrial beings like the Greys, they just absorb these energies, liquids, by way of sitting and lying in like containers, or they absorb the energy, you see. So depending on the being you are, but ultimately you have to be taught. And when you open your third eye or the pineal gland, it then gives you the ability to continue the development to reactivating your higher senses, okay? That's your telepathy, your intuition, psychometry, and clairvoyance. So now you start to deal with things and able to perhaps deal with the other realms, like astral projection, like seeing interdimensionally, remote viewing, your sense of smell heightens, your vision in terms of what you can see and perceive and discern. It just becomes so much more powerful. So you just know. This is why I said in the garden, to know good from evil, not to believe, because religions and society have a way of programming you to accept things that don't make sense. But when your mind is activated and your eyes are open and you're now able to discern things, no matter what lie they try to sell to the public or to the masses, your being is able to tune in and will be able to know things, right? But of course, you still have to be groomed and trained and we keep saying this to people, not everything we know we're going to share publicly, because it's also about you proving yourself. Like, even if you want to look at the parables or all the leaders and teachers that came before, they say things like, many are called, few are chosen. You can't take pearls and, you know, and give, or, you know, give them to swine. Certain religious groups call people infidels or heathens, or you know, all kinds of names, just to kind of say you don't meet the grade. And what we're saying is, the most intelligent being on the planet that has been tasked with doing this job of separating, you know, those who are real from those who are fake, etc., is here. All right. So I hope that's answered your question. But in relation to, you say why we don't get no help as Nagaru, we do. That's why he's here, and he's just one of many beings, right? And there is a hierarchy of beings. So you have, like, you know, the nine, you have the 24 elders, then ultimately our ancestors, the overseers, who have been on this planet, who own this planet originally. But now, because of us and people not elevating, right, and transforming themselves, other extraterrestrials have managed to take control, and the planet goes on, for lack of a better word, like a word, it's like available for control, or let's say auction, or people can buy it and take control of it. Because if the beings that are supposed to be responsible are not, because of the programming or the fact that they're not waking up, then somebody else is going to take control. So we do have help. Our ancestors and your ancestors, the ones that have crossed over, that are also able to help you from the other realms, guide you, suggest things. You hear voices in your head and so on. But you also have the disagreeable ones that didn't make the grade, for lack of a better word, and they're waiting for, say, you to help them and free them on the other side. And some of them, you know, they are not able to do very much for you, because they are being controlled by other, like I said before, other disagreeable extraterrestrial or entities that vibrate on different dimensions, and you just can't see them, but they're around us everywhere, and physically as well as on scene. Again, yeah, we have been subjugated because over the last 6,000 years, we were in a spell that was cast on us, known as the spell of amnesia, the spell of sleep, basically to forget who you are. That's why I said that even though we are gods, right? And the thing is, we've been telling people all along, even the Bible, the Quran, these books tell you that we are gods. But people didn't accept it. Now remember, if you're someone in control, as in the Adamites have been in control for the last 6,000 years, but they don't realize or know, remember, they also don't know their full history. That's why they're always trying to dig up things and find things and trying to work out where they come from. And if we were here first and we tell them we are gods, and they look at us like, whatever, subjugate you, you know, through various methods, and then they look at themselves as being superior. But then as they're trying to find and dig up things to try and find where they're from or how they got here, and we're saying we're gods, and they're looking at us like, no, you're not. But then everything they excavate, find, even to the point of the DNA, to the findings, where they find things, it's all in Africa are the oldest findings. The DNA is showing that the root is from Africa, from the first female, or the, you know, the mitochondria, Eve, as they say. And so now everything is starting to point to the fact of what we're saying, as we are gods, in terms of we're the most creative. You know, whether you're dealing with sports, whether you're dealing with creativity, and name it, neuromelanin, you know, in terms of the brain. Now it's been uncovered. So what's happening is some people are in denial, they try to hide it, the jealousy kicks in terms of the enmity, and yeah, so you see the conditions of the world by someone who is jealous, like I said, to the point where it's hard to deal with the hard truths now, but it's being exposed because with the coming of Malachi, as explained in Malachi, chapter 4, verse 2, talking about the Son of Righteousness coming, because we're also talking about a sun cycle when we're dealing with this cycle. It's natural nature. These things happen every 24,000 years. But if you weren't around 24,000 years ago in the previous cycles, and you only came around 6,000 years ago in the last moon cycles, a lot of the things you're discovering that go back millions of years is shocking. It's proving that you weren't there at the time. This is why history is really based on what's been exposed in the last 6,000 years. But now when you archaeologists and anthropologists and whatever other scientists are going back millions of years and finding out ancient civilizations, finding out fossils and opening tombs, and a lot of it is in ancient Egypt, and the discoveries are pointing to facts and facts and facts of beyond a doubt that the Neanderthal and the Cro-Magnon were found in Europe, and all of this is all back to 6,000 years ago. Whereas the African, when you're dealing with the Lucy, Homo naledi, Homo habilis, you're dealing with all of these findings in Africa, which go back millions of years. And of course, you've got the Asian who, they find like the Denisovan and the Homo florensis, which is like all around Asia, you see. So yeah, we're living in a day and time where these tensions with, things they're speaking about like immigration and, the racism is still very rife, but people are looking at it like, just look at the history of the world and see who's causing the wars, unaliving of people, going to other places and colonizing, subjugating people. And it's still happening till today. So, anyone with a bit of, sense in terms of utilizing their brain and their mind can just put things together and see very clearly that there is a situation where some people are really very desperate right now because it's judgment time, and that's referred to as judgment upon the Adamites. All right, so let's move on to the next question.
And to follow up on that last question, I'm curious as to what exactly is beyond this barrier. Like, what exists outside of this barrier, and how far does it extend? I'm not sure if that's knowledge that would even be privy to Wusabat, but
Yeah, so I mean, again, like I said, the barrier you're referring to, there's so many barriers. There are barriers in terms of mentally, your mind, because like it's very hard to reach people who are not intelligent. And I don't mean that in the sense of trying to put anybody down, but when you're saying intelligence, you're really dealing with the intel you have in your genes and in your genetics. And, when you're not using higher intelligence, you're going to behave and act, on a lower vibration. Like you got animals and beings that do not have the same ability that we have, because we inherited the DNA and the genetics of our ancestors, who are the real beings, the supreme beings. They have evolved so far. And this is another thing, like, let me try and paint a picture to kind of make things clear. So you are in a planet called Earth, which has many levels or surroundings. And as you come down in density, you're trapped by way of your mind. So how you think, what you do. And if you're not, like I said previously, if you're not activated and your real eye is not open, you can't see certain things. Then you have the layers of like the rules and regulations where you live, which depending on the governments and whatever systems that are in place, like the penal system, the police and the things that are put in place to restrict you. Then you have restrictions in terms of what you can tune into. So even though physically you may be trapped, your mind actually is able to transcend and reach higher levels to pull out formation and receive, because you are your electromagnetic semiconductor. So despite all these layers that are put in place to trap or block you, you have to focus on yourself, focus on your inner being, focus on activating your real being that is limitless and cannot be restricted. That's what I'm talking about when I say your mind, when I say your soul, when I talk about the fact that your real being can leave this skin suit. And of course, there are things that are in place as well. You've got so many millions of satellites surrounding the planet right now. There are layers and layers and layers that are trying to keep people trapped here, because when you look at yourself as an electromagnetic being, with energy and electricity, and it's so important to realize your power, but at the same time to realize that your physical body can trap you, your mind can trap you, your real energetic being can be trapped, because you just have to know beings that are aware of this type of information, they utilize vibrations and frequencies. They can send waves and frequencies to you, like we say, radio waves, right? So you have to understand there's a level of learning about the electromagnetic spectrum where even though on the physical, your physical body can be trapped, but then there are different aspects of you. This is why people who are able to remote view or to astral project or to be able to travel and leave the physical body, they can go and experience different dimensions and different things. All right. So when you're dealing with Yanun as a being, it's a completely different situation to the physical skin suit of Malachi York. All right. Yeah. So the barrier that you're talking about, like I said, there are many barriers, physical as well as what people would consider unseen or non-physical. People talk about the barriers in the Antarctic and where people are not allowed to go because there are many extraterrestrials and beings that have been on this planet and have settled there for a long time. And there are barriers in terms of going into the subterranean world known as Shambhala. There were many entrances to it that now are being blocked or guarded. Some of the entrances were the North and South Poles, the pyramids. Now you're starting to hear about underground tunnels that link. I mean, most of the information people are talking about today, Parna Babyan and Dr. Malachi Z. York gave it to us years ago. This is why I referenced the Holy Tablets, for example, which explains about beings that came here, the Anunnaki, Alalu, and they went to South America, and Enki and Enlil, and he explained about life on Mars, the faces on Mars. He told us who they were, like it was Alalu's face, and his wife, he built statues to her. So underground tunnels that connect, different continents. That's how deep it is. You can get from New York to London very quickly, and a lot of these tunnels, even within America, have been exposed, especially during Diddy's case and certain things that were happening. They're starting to tell you that even like celebrities, they had an underground completely network where they travel to avoid traffic. Elon Musk was building, these underground pathways to travel, with these types of shuttles and things like that. Most of what's been exposed, we have been told and taught this many, many, many years ago. And the Holy Tablets was out before a lot of this information. So it just verifies, that Dr. York is a visitor, and that most of what's been exposed today, he already exposed and gave us that knowledge and information a long time ago, which is why we are pretty much like 30 to 50 years, if not even more to most people that have popped up on the scene and regurgitating and teaching the information that he was teaching us from the 60s. So yeah, I hope that really does help. Let's get to your final question.
Our last question is essentially, what are we supposed to do now? What is our recourse? You know, I know you're supposed to keep studying Wu Sabat, OSM Vision, Dr. Dusa, Dr. Malachi Z. York. Just be kind, loving, spiritual, and I get that. Have the right knowledge and be armed with it. But the more right knowledge you acquire, the more depressed you'll more than likely be, because you'll see that the world is very incongruent with that knowledge. Very incongruent. And things are incredibly backwards, and everyone is just all over the place. And people don't know what they're talking about type deal, you know? And I can't really claim that I 100% know everything, right? So, yeah, I don't know. What would be your advice to a young knowledge seeker who finds himself depressed, trying to find his way through this life, through this cycle that we're currently in? Because the more I learn, it's like we could be doing great things, but we never will. So, or we just haven't. I shouldn't say never, right? But yeah, thank you so much for your time and your consideration. My name is Dale McFadden. Instagram, again, DEY_McFadden, McFadden. And so again, if you're seeing this, huge fan. Take care, and thank you again for your time. Hi there. My name is Dale McFadden.
Okay, so
I am a knowledge.
okay, so yeah, the last question. One of the I'm trying to find the right word to use. One of the things we find challenging is people make things very complicated. Even when we tell them exactly what to do, it's a situation where sometimes people be like, I don't know what to do. Even if you think about it, like, in a relationship or whatever, someone might say, I don't know what to do. But then the person that they're speaking to tells them exactly what to do, and they don't do it. So in relation to the question, what we say to people all the time, you feel lonely, depressed, etc. if you feel that you're on your own, like you're carrying the world on your shoulders. Like you say, once you're awake, like the movie They Live, you start to see the world completely differently to what you did before. Just like in the garden, they tell you they learned shame. They started to try to cover themselves because they now saw things completely different. So if you're in the matrix and you're seeing the world, the illusion of what you think is really going on, you don't know good from evil, you don't know good from bad, you don't know what's real from what's not real. And it's getting worse with AI intervention and the distortion of reality. If you feel that you're by yourself, of course you're gonna not have people you can relate to or speak to. And the more you know, the more your eyes are open, the more is revealed to you. Unless you are amongst like-minded people, you are going to feel like an outcast. You're going to feel out of place. You're going to be in situations where you can't have a conversation with people that are not on that level, right? So we say to people all the time, it's not just reading the information, accumulating information. It's actually putting it into practice. And the simple thing we say is, come close, be a part of a community, be amongst people who are being guided and that know what's going on and know what to do next, right? So the best advice, if I could call it advice, is come and be amongst us, be amongst people who know what time it is, who know what's going on, who know what we're doing, as we're guided by one who knows the way, all right? And you won't feel alienated, and you're not going to feel alone. You're not going to feel like you're going to be able to navigate this world, because the mind, right? We always recommend the mind scroll and your potential. You only feel powerless if you're not applying what you're being taught. and how powerful you are as a being and the powers that you have. But again, it's very simple. It literally starts with you coming into the community, coming into the stores, being guided by those who are guided, and you will know and you will start to feel that empowerment. You know, you start to live right, you start to deal with love. Love in the sense of, that's what we're saying, like, love transcends all things, right? So when people are if people hate you and you know how to transform that energy and utilize ashuk in our language, which means divine love, then you're able to navigate through this, and you're definitely not going to feel alone, because you're going to be united with other beings who are, because remember, energy resonates, and you resonate with those who are on the same frequency and the same vibration. And that's why you have to rise above the lower vibrations and the negative energy that keeps people in that state of depression, control, you know, just feeling like they're helpless and they have no power, when in actuality it's entirely the other way around. But you have to be activated. You have to get to that point first. And that's why we're here. That's why we're constantly helping people to unplug from the matrix. And that comes with responsibility. It comes with you also now having the job to help others wake up and to help them also liberate, because liberation comes from first liberating your mind, because your mind governs your decisions and your actions ultimately. So we can't say it any more simple. Come into the community, go to the stores, become a part of Wusabat, so that you can know and be protected based on your actions and applying the knowledge, liberation knowledge. All right. So yeah, reading and studying is great, but you have to put it into practice amongst a community. All right. So thanks again for your questions. Remember, if you have questions and you would like to send them to us so we can answer them for you, record yourself asking 3 questions. We do say please keep them as short and to the point as possible, so that we can answer them for you. Once you're happy with your recording, upload it to osmvision.wetransfer.com. All right. Until the next one, I'm Saken Sakamreye, one of the millions of student teachers of the master teacher, Partner Babyanun, Dr. Malachi Z. York, the angel that is here right now to help you if you accept the help. All right. Till next time. Wadu.